Welcome to Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by former world number one Laura Massaro and performance coach Ahad Reza.
We break down what's really happening in high-level squash across the technical, tactical, physical, and mental realms and help you translate it into action.
You will hear match analysis, guided insights, coaching demonstrations, and conversations with some of the best minds in sport.
But this isn't just about the theory. It's about growing a community of curious players and coaches dedicated to unlocking their potential together.
So if you're ready to train smarter, think deeper, and play better, join us Between the Lines. Hey everyone, quick interruption. If you've ever felt stuck in your squash, you're training hard but not improving fast enough, Laura and I built something just for you.
Our new online coaching community gives you the structure, clarity, and live access to us every month so you can finally break past plateaus without paying private coaching fees.
If that sounds like what you need, just email me at ahad@arperformance.com and I'll help you get started. Now, back to the program. Hi, everyone. We just wrapped up a fantastic conversation with Laura's old performance analyst, Stafford Murray. And Laura, first of all, the dynamic between the two of you is amazing. So anyone listening, you guys are going to love some really cool stories. There's a lot of free-flowing stuff that happens. The one thing that Stafford said that stood out to me was, even though there's so much technology available, sometimes the simplest things, and he goes into detail about exactly what you can do, the simplest things can help make a significant impact in your game. So listen and figure out what that is. Laura, what about you? What stood out?
Absolutely. I think for me, it was, obviously him being so involved in the numbers, but he was saying stories, and obviously we had a great story of Peter Nicol where he was talking about the humanizing of those numbers and how important it is to really build relationships, that you can't throw the numbers out at people who aren't invested in it. And ultimately, I kind of wrapped up the podcast with, whoever it may be, a coach or analyst or a nutritionist, it's people in life, it's how they make you feel, not necessarily what they say. And he's just an absolute prime example of that. So I'm super excited for everyone to get their teeth into this episode and let us know what they think. Today on Between the Lines, it's a blast from the past for me. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome someone who's had a huge impact on both my own journey and the history of England squash, Stafford Murray. From 1998 to 2010, Stafford played a pivotal role with England squash, providing game-changing analysis at some of the most defining moments of our sport. His insight and expertise weren't just influential for me personally, but they helped shape some of the biggest chapters in England squash's history. After leaving that role, Stafford joined the English Institute of Sport, where he stepped into leadership as head of performance analysis. There, he oversaw sport science delivery across multiple Olympic and Paralympic games, working on the disciplines like judo, archery, and gymnastics. But the journey didn't stop there. He took the expertise to high-performance sport in New Zealand, becoming Director of Innovation, focusing on how technology and novel ideas could enhance athletic performance, where he focused on using technology and fresh ideas to push the limits of athletic performance. And today, he's back in the UK, Head of Analysis and Insights at the ECB, bringing his full experience full circle to the world of cricket. It's one heck of a CV, Stafford, and it's taken you across the globe, always pushing boundaries, always innovating, and we're so pleased to have you on today's podcast.
Well, thanks, Laura. That sounds like someone else.
Feel free to use that on your CV going forward.
We would. Yeah.
Well,
so, for anyone listening, let's start right at the very beginning. For those who don't know, what exactly does an analyst do?
Well, great question, Laura. Basically, the very, very kind of start of it was around observation of human beings. And there was science back in the 60s and 70s, basically, that showed that humans can only recall around 30 to 40% of what they actually see, depending on the skill level of the coach, depending on the sport that they're trying to watch or trying to observe. So if you think you can only see, let's say, 35% of, you recall 35% of what you see, there could be 65% of really important information missing. So the kind of fundamental kind of reason to ETRA is to try and recapture the stuff that you can't recall through the human eye, and add an objectivity to what we're analysing, as opposed to an opinion based. So that's the kind of basics behind it, really.
Wow. That's pretty, I mean, that's exciting. I actually never knew that we could only see about 30 or 35% of what's in front of us. So that you just educated me
Really
right off the
cool, yeah.
bat. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how I mean, you've worked in so many different sports and so many industries, Stafford. How do some of the sports use you? Like, how did you use in squash? Like, what sort of analysis did you complete? And in F1, I remember seeing in your CV you worked in F1. Like, how did it change sport to sport?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of underlying principle's the same, really. We're trying to objectify or inform decision-making processes. And those decision-making processes generally across the sports are around three things, really, and that's about selection. So who are the best players for us to select? It's around the venue and or the competition that we're going to be playing in. So what are the demands of the upcoming event, whatever that may be, or championships or Commonwealth Games? What are the demands? What are the demands of that? And then the third one is, what is the tactics that we're going to deploy against that opponent within that environment in that competition? What's the best tactic to to deliver? So we use historic data, so previous performances, to try and predict what the best type of future performance is. Which back in the day, in our day in squash, it was a blend between the numbers and the players and the coaches' opinion. So the tacit kind of domain expertise blended with the objectivity of the numbers, um, to then try and calculate what the best decision is going to be around selection and around tactics. These days, obviously, there's very strong predictive modelling, that does a better job on predicting the numbers, but it still doesn't predict the context. And it's never going to replace the eye or the ear or the nose of a coach and a player, because they know and they feel and they see stuff the numbers can't actually measure. So it's always a blend between the human factor and the science, basically.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah. So you think so a lot of that what you just said was maybe tactical stuff, potentially a little bit of team selection. What about the technique alongside? I mean, that's the memory that I have of you with the big old TV screen on the
Yeah,
glass court at Manchester. I'm sure you don't
extreme.
require all
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah. I
technology and
do.
equipment now.
Still have nightmares about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Laura. I mean, if you think back to, I mean, really one of the first and probably still the greatest tacticians ever is Sun Tzu, the warrior leader, and he said, if you know your opponent, then you have a great chance of winning. Basically, that's not his quote verbatim, but that's basically what he was saying. Um, but along with that, exactly as you say, Laura, you can you can have the best tactic or the best plan, but if you haven't got the technique that can deliver that plan, then it's kind of futile, really, isn't it? So if you've got a tactic without a good technique, or a good technique without a good tactic, you need the two, don't you? So I remember, Laura, when back in fact, I've got a photo here of the Commonwealth Games in 2010, and I know we were looking at the best tactics to deliver, and then we'd work with the coach, or work with your individual coach or with a national coach. Say, okay, so this is the tactics we need to deliver. What's the technique I need to actually deliver that tactic? I need to have a strong backhand volley short. Technically, how do I actually maximise that? So you need the two, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just to jump in again, I had because I think you've underplayed a little bit your role of your technique there because you're saying that in relation to kind of the tactics. But I rung DP in I rung DP in anticipation of our chat, and I said, DP, tell me some of the things in your memory that Stafford, basically was responsible for in his time at England squash. And, he did it about a little bit and and ahhed and said he couldn't really remember anything. And then, and then when I pushed him, he said, I'll tell you what. And obviously, like it is DP, he comes out with the line that Nick Matthew would not have been world number one had it not been for Stafford Murray. And I was like, flipping out, DP. You've just said you couldn't remember anything. You dithering about for 10 minutes and then you come out with a line like that. What a line. So, I'm sure you're going to go, well, tell me if I'm wrong. That's probably a bit of an exaggeration. I don't know. Maybe it isn't. But he honestly was like, if Stafford hadn't have helped me, DP as the coach, help Nick understand his technique, there is no chance that he would have been world number one. So what do you say in response to that?
Interesting. I mean, his backhand was rubbish, wasn't it? But, no, I think. I mean, it's very kind of what DP said, and I probably owe him £10 now. But I mean, one thing to say about DP is, I think he's the best technical coach in any sport that I've ever worked with. He really is incredible. He
Wow.
sees things and changes things that he's got a real eye. And there's many wonderful coaches around the world I work, but just for
Of course,
changing
yeah.
little tiny technical things that you wouldn't see, I think he's one of the best in the world. But I think what he's alluding to there is saying that Nick wouldn't have made it without me. I mean, it's probably more without having the video analysis. What it did, and DP will back this up, and so will Nick, is having that real time feedback, having the ability to see the stuff in a real time nature. If you think from a skill acquisition point of view, it actually speeds up the learning process. So
Yeah.
Nick technically probably would have got to where he got to, but it would have taken 4 years instead of 6 months.
Yeah.
So I think having that, well, I mean, research has shown it's obvious that having that real time visual objective feedback speeds up the learning curve.
That's
And
very
also,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, and also increases the retention of change. Because if you think you're making technical changes, if you just think about a 40-minute session. So Laura, like the sessions you were given yesterday, you got 40 minutes with the player. Yeah, you probably change the technique or change the swing some point within that 40 minutes. And when they finish the session, you go, I've got the perfect backhand volley now. But actually, they probably forget it the next day, don't they? You
Yeah.
know. Whereas if you've got that real time visual stuff, you can take that visual stuff away. The retention of that change is definitely increased as well.
That's interesting, Stafford. So, I mean, nowadays you're obviously way closer to any of this than we are, but even kind of in the consumer space, you're starting to see these different applications that are popping up where you see those little green dots and lines on people's limbs and so on and so forth. How much of that kind of stuff did you use during your time at England Squash? And just with this example of Nick, which is really interesting, like what sort of frequency do you almost recommend? Would someone like Nick come and look at his technique after hitting 2-3 shots? Would you wait 5 minutes? Like, is there almost like a best practice for this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, and that's to be honest, mate. That's the $1 million question,
Mm,
and it's very dependent on the personality and the learning preference of the player.
mm,
So we had players within our squads going back before Nick's time that wouldn't want to watch their own video. They just wouldn't want to see them, particularly when they lost, which is a shame because when you lose, that's probably the best time you should be watching it.
yeah.
You know, so it definitely depends on the learning style and the preference of the player. If we take Nick as an example, he was a very methodical, very organised, very motivated individual, to put it politely. And he wanted everything. His methodology was give me everything, and then I will filter out what I need as a player. So with Nick, we'd be doing video sessions 3 or 4 times a week. And if we're trying to change a particular technique, and I was taking Nicky about his backhand, of course his backhand was good, but
Yeah.
we were actually trying to change his grip shape, and his impact points, which sounds very simple, doesn't it, for the best player in the world? But we were trying to change that. And DP would literally stop him at the start of the session, shot by shot, and say, right, come and have a look. Now change that, do it again, come and have a look. We'd compare those two to see if the intervention had made a change. And then you're trying to groove it into some kind of into some kind of routine, and then you come back every 10, 20 shots to see if the change has been retained. Right. And then you look at a tournament the following week to see if actually what we've done in the coaching process is actually being delivered in match play. So whilst it's not an exact science because it depends on the nature of the two people working together, the coach and the player, there is a framework to it. That you're trying to change the technique. If you're trying to make a technical change, the level of feedback has to be high. But then the key is when it becomes match play, it's got to be automated for the player. The player can't be thinking about that when it comes to match play. So when we were making technical changes, you wouldn't make massive, if any, technical changes during a tournament.
Yep.
You talk about tactics, of course, but you wouldn't be tweaking technical stuff during a tournament, unless Laura, you were different. But I know the players I was very close with, which you were one of course. But we tried to avoid massive technical changes during match play time.
Right. And if I can, Laura, I'm curious for people listening when they are trying to make these sorts of changes. With you mentioned with Nick, he made the same changes potentially in 6 months instead of say 4 years. He might have made the same changes. On average, what sort of timeline? How much does it almost help to have this sort of video review and feedback based on your experience in the research? Does it streamline things? Does it cut things in half? Does it cut things into a quarter? Is there some kind of metric around that?
Laura, do you want to go on that, or do you want?
That I was just going to say that depends on the quality of the coach I had.
Yes.
Come on, like if you coach by a great coach, then all right, it's going to cut it down. No, I think it's a fair question for you, Stafford. But because we'll just take the coaching I've been doing over the weekend. Even just with my basic phone video, I'm like, we've got amateurs who maybe just without being too overly harsh, a little bit less aware of like bodily awareness, let's say. So they hit a shot and they don't really know what they're doing. That's obviously not the case the higher up you go in professional level. But even still, you video them and you go, does this look like what you think it's going to look like? Because or can you exaggerate it for me? They feel absolutely horrendous. And then they watch the video and go, oh, that's not that bad. So I think yeah, it depends. But I mean, it would just be really interesting, even in the other sports you've worked with. Like I think about a sport like gymnastics, for example, Staff, like where you've worked with them, and you're like, how do you get them to, we're talking millimeters, aren't we? Landing on a beam or pommel horse, anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your point's very true, Laura. You're saying about the people you were coaching yesterday, and you can now do it on your phone. I mean, you look back to 15 years ago when we were first doing it. That's kind of what we were doing, but we just didn't have the phone technology then. So we had to have a camera and we had to have a screen. So we were kind of doing the same thing. Whereas now you can do it. Anyone can do it. Any parent, anyone can do it. Obviously, when you get into the more kind of complex motor skill sports, there is or there may be the need to analyze in greater depth. So biomechanical analyses, etc. These days, you can use a thing called open pose, which kind of measures your movement real time just from AI on the camera system. That's definitely important, and is needed for lots of purposes. Generally around kind of movement pattern behavior, so injury prevention, maximizing movement patterns, etc. But it does often still come back to a good, simple feedback system. And if that's someone's phone, that's great. That's almost all you need to make the initial performance changes. But obviously now we do very, very complex stuff. We can measure everything, absolutely everything, which is great, but is also a bit of a danger as well, because what tends to happen is that we collect data because we can. So we measure everything because the ability is there to measure it. But why are we measuring it? What's the performance question? What's the change that we're trying to create? So anyone that's watching this, or anyone that does any analysis or video feedback, the start of it shouldn't be the technology or the data. It should be what are we actually trying to change here?
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the questions I had was, can you almost overanalyze anything? Have you ever been in a situation in any sports that you've worked in where, and I guess this is down to personality of the player too, but can you overanalyze? Can you almost give too much information? Can you boggle people's mind with it a little bit too much, whether that be technical or tactical? And then is there an element for you? Is that an element for you to consider, or is that more around delivering it with the coach and making sure the coach is delivering the right amount for the personality of the player?
Exactly that. You answered your question yourself, didn't you? Exactly.
Okay, well, let me ask you another one then.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
No, go on. No. I meant that positively, Laura. Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah. So the key is that it's got to be edible by the audience, isn't it? And in this instance, the audience is the player, and if the player doesn't want to receive that information in that way, then they aren't going to use it. So I'll go way, 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 way back. before Nick's time, before Peter Nicholls' time, and the kind of Simon Park, Peter Marshall era when we were starting in the late 90s. And I tried to do a motivational video for Cassie. Do you remember Cassie Jackman?
Yeah, of course.
As she was then. You remember
Yep.
Cassie? And we were pulling motivational videos
99
together.
world champion.
Yeah.
That's the one, and it was for that tournament. And we were pulling motivational videos together, which we used to put positive clips, so clips of them hitting winners to music that they like, and the idea was that they watched that before playing, and it would increase their self efficacy and their motivation, etc. What I didn't realize when I was pulling the video together was I was getting winners of Cassie together, but it was from a match that she lost. So even though the shots were positive, the actual memory of that video was negative because she'd lost that match. So you got to be really, really careful when you are providing feedback. That, again, using the word context, the context of that information or that vision is actually correct for that person.
Yeah.
And that was my first biggest cock up, and I've made a bloody load since. That was my first biggest cock up.
Yeah. When just touching on that, the other part of the question, or the answer that you gave to the previous question, where you were sort of saying about things that can't be measured, have you noticed? Is that something for you to take into consideration as well? Are the things, obviously there's things that can't be measured, isn't there, in athletes?
Yeah.
How do you go about managing that? Because there'll be certain athletes that are just tough and
Yeah, totally, and isn't that what makes sport fun? Do you know what I mean? It's not a one size fits all methodology, is it? And that's why we like watching sport, because there's different people that do things in different ways and different backgrounds and different methods. But what we try and do, using the bloody buzzword, is create a balanced scorecard approach. So it's the opinion of the player, it's the opinion of the coach, it's the opinion of peers, and then it's the numbers as well. So you've got that balanced scorecard approach that it's like a 360 review.
Yeah.
Of a player or of a situation.
Yeah.
And we do a little, or we used to. We don't. I don't now, but back in when I was working with the Olympic teams, we used to do insights profiling. Did you do that, Laura?
Good question.
Did you do insights profiling?
Remind me what it is again.
So basically, it's a psychological questionnaire that basically captures the way that you like to learn and the way that you like to receive info.
Right.
So then we would know that player X likes loads of numbers and likes videos. Player Y doesn't like numbers but loves the video. So we use that a bit, but then, to be honest, the coach and the player know that. Like the first thing that the best coaches in the world to do is get to know the person as opposed to the athlete. So coaches know that anyway. And that's where, with all due respect to analysts around the world, that's where analysts make a mistake, that they either try to supersede the coach or don't listen to the coach's opinion, because unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, the coaches know the players better than anyone. Good coaching. Sorry.
Good. Well, this is very interesting because before I transitioned careers purely into squash, I used to work at a financial institution, and I remember a lot of what you're describing here is resonating with me so deeply because we did all these assessments to figure out, what each person's learning style is, so they could try to get harmony across the team, to see that people are of similar learning capabilities and they'd interact effectively, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting to see this being paralleled at the highest level of sport, kind of, in the Olympic teams and so on and so forth. So I found that very fascinating. The other thing, actually, my question was around the increase in the improvements in technology over time. So when you were working with England Squash, obviously, things have changed significantly in the last decade or more with AI and computer vision and so on and so forth. If you were back in squash, how might you leverage the current technology to, deliver outstanding analysis at the moment?
Yeah, real time.
Yeah,
having data available real time, which I know PSA is starting to do a bit on their coverage, which is fantastic, and Lee Beechell and his crew do a fantastic job there. But the availability of real-time data now is, and I hate this phrase, but it's a real game changer.
Yeah.
So whether that's wearable tech that the player wears, whether it's AI computer vision that just monitors movement, that gets speeds, that gets distance covered, everything you can get the humidity of the core, how that affects. So basically, I would be using now real-time interventions that can inform the decision making during a match, because a lot of the stuff we used to do in squash was pre-match and then post-match, so pre-brief and debrief. Whereas now, do you know what? We've got the tools that can actually inform decision making there and then. So increase the real-time nature of using the current tech and the current AI, machine learning, computer vision, whatever technique you want to use, wearable tech, swallowable tech, everything. I'd be using that to inform decision making real time.
I love that. And actually, two questions. One for Laura as well in a sec. Laura, I'm curious from your perspective, what are some of the most important metrics that you think would inform some of the top players for tactical decision making in the moment? I'm curious to hear that from you, Laura. And Stafford, for you, you mentioned wearable tech. Are there certain devices and units? I remember years ago reading about something called by Catapult, where there was like the GPS tracking and it would give you like forces and all that sort of stuff. Is there stuff that's more commonly available for end consumers as well that you can maybe share with the group?
Yeah. Go on, Laura.
I think I saw Paul Cole wearing that Catapult yesterday. He looked like he was wearing a sports bra between games.
Yeah.
Something tucked in the bag. Anyway, that's for you, Stafford. That's a really interesting question. I guess I'd be thinking about, I mean, obviously, as a coach, and I've seen the likes of Chris Roberts and even I think James Wilstrop writing down on a pad very simple things like winners and errors. I'm assuming winners and errors. So that would obviously be a go-to. Maybe position of errors is another one that would be really important in match. From the opponent, I mean. So like, how are you creating errors from your opponent? Where are you hitting your own winners? Something a bit different might be around the volley, something around like how many volleys were taken, how many volleys that could have been taken got missed, things like that, I guess would be, I've never really thought too much about it. But I mean, obviously, Stafford, with your squash knowledge and watching, are you watching any squash at the moment? Maybe you could answer that one too.
Yeah, watching it thinking, blimey heck, that's fast, isn't it?
I know it is.
Wow, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. I mean, Laura explained two things there. Looking at winners and errors, your distribution, your frequency, your ratios, etc. That's really good. But what that is that's outcome data. So it describes what ended the rally or what the outcome data is. And then Laura said, perhaps we should look at volleys that missed, which is absolutely right. That's the process data. So what's the stuff that we can measure and start analyzing that actually led to the winners and errors? Was it missing the volley? Was it leaving a volley? Was it actually tactically playing a boast instead of playing a drop or whatever it may be? So I think looking at the process data as opposed to just the outcome data is something that we within sports science are starting to do. And within squash, we looked at a theory called perturbation theory, which was, if I say in very, very simplistic squash terms, not that squash is simple, but in terminology wise, what's the shot that leads to winning the rally, as opposed to what's the shot that you actually play that wins the rally. So it might not be the drop shot in the front backhand corner. Do you know what? It was the straight drive seven shots ago that put pressure on your opponent, and that's something that we're constantly trying to measure in sport. Every sport across the world. How do you first of all quantify pressure? Because everyone talks about pressure, don't they? How do you quantify pressure, and then how do you measure it? And if you can quantify and measure pressure through your analysis techniques, then you're onto a bloody winner.
It's really interesting, actually, Stafford, because I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the lost art within squash a little bit. And I know what you're saying about PSA doing a little bit more, but that's PSA, that's purely from a TV perspective. Like when I think to England squash now and the analysis that's going on, it really was a culture that I grew up in that was just part of the England squash culture. Like you were weird if you didn't do technical work, if you didn't get on court with you and DP. it was just what you'd seen your whole
Yeah.
junior career. And now I get on and I obviously follow in the footsteps, I guess, of being very technical myself, going through the technical process, having a very technical coach. I am that way. I lend myself to that quite a lot. And I just wondered if you wouldn't, as a sport in whole, what I'd like to know is if you were thinking of sport in general and you were a squash player listening to this, would your opinion be squash seem to now, whether it be England squash or squash as a whole, who knows, be almost kind of missing a trick when it comes to, because I'm thinking, well, hold on, tennis, golf,
Mm.
cricket, Formula One, gymnastics, all these huge sports where there's huge amount of money involved are all like maxing out. Yeah, I try and put a video on someone and they don't really want to go away and do the work, and I can't get my head around it.
Yeah. Uh, couldn't agree more. And I'm not that close to squash anymore, which is a shame, because it's my it's like going home, and but it's just life is busy. But we had a sweet spot then. That period from the start of the noughties really to kind of 2015, 2012, 2015. We were the leaders in the use of sports science. And we were lucky to be part of that period. It was a real. We were doing stuff that wasn't being done, and we had the coaches and we had the leaders at the time that were prepared to take those risks.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt whatsoever that it had an effect on your career, on Nick Matthews' career, on Peter Nicholls' career, on I'm trying to think. Come on, help me out here. Jenny Duncalf's career. All
Adrian Grant, all of them.
Granty, all
Nick
players that.
Barker. Yeah.
Yeah, the Barker brother, like players that got into the top five, and then yourself, that were world number one, world champion.
Yeah.
There's 5-10 players that used this scientific approach. It didn't ever replace feel. It didn't ever replace what a coach does. It did never replace hard work. It ain't ever going to do that. But it's going to fast track it. And I think when I look at some sports and some players now, it's quite sad that they don't embrace it.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up question on that, because you mentioned Peter Nicol, and as you know, I've just been working with Pete. I had a great week with him. Obviously, he came up in conversation, and I said to him, as another one of my, I'm going to talk to Stafford, because go on, tell me what your overriding memory is, and some influences, something I can ask him. And he said, I think you should ask him about how he personally he humanized the changing of technique for me. So I guess I'm looking back at that early on in the England squash kind of analysis side, and you being, the personality you are, and, just go and have a beer with someone after an event, really super friendly. That changes it. You get a boring sorry for all them analysts out there, but you get a boring who doesn't want to kind of do that. And I just wondered what your take was on it, because he said he was actually not that open to it at the start, because obviously we saw that as the generation after. We saw him and, everyone using it, and it was the start there with him and DP and yourself. So how do you go about convincing people? How did you humanize that for him and make it so that he wanted to do it?
That's a bloody great question, Nora. I mean, the specific example of Pete, I'll come to after, because it's a I don't know, it's a funny story, but it's a true story. But I mean, the way that we do, the way that we try and get the kind of message across, because there's no point ramming it down someone's throat if they don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter how many times you say it. If it isn't landing, stop saying it. So stories are always good. Anecdotal evidence stories, say, oh, actually, this player used it and it made that change. Influencing people that have got that person's ear. So if I was trying to influence back in the day Lee Beachill, I'd probably try and influence Malcolm Ulstrop to sell that seed in his head. Because some people are against it, and we have to respect that. And some people get to the best in the world without using it. So it's not a one size fits all model. So we have to. Advocates are always good. If we get someone who's an advocate that can then sell it to that person. But with Peter, so he started. I think he joined in '98. I think he came and joined England from Scotland, which was a big thing back then. We were the best in the world at the time, and Scotland and England obviously have got a rivalry in sport. So him to come to England was a really big thing. really, really big thing, and he found it very hard personally, but he had to because he wanted to carry on being the best player in the world. Um, and the first European Championships that we went to, which was in, I can't remember. And anyway, Peter wasn't allowed to play because he had to have 12 months kind of free fallow period where he's not playing for any country. And DP said, right, Pete's going to come, and he said, your job is to get to know him and work out how we can use this stuff in my coaching to help him be the best player in the world again, or still, sorry. So just got to know him, and he's one of the nicest people I know in the world. He's one of the best athletes, probably the best athlete I've ever seen in the world, across most sports. And we got a friendship going, and I didn't even talk about analysis before we got that kind of bond. Because there's nothing worse than some bloody geek in a white suit talking about science and how it's going to make you a better player when he's been the best player in the world for the last 6 years and beaten Jonathan Power and David Palmer, and Jansha Khan for, why should he listen to me until he actually respects me as a person? So we talked about everything but that. For the week in Germany, he was in Germany somewhere. Can't remember where.
That's brilliant.
And then we started filtering stuff about, actually, Pete, when you're doing that, perhaps we could do a bit of this with DP. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So I think that's where we were lucky in that period, Laura, that like people were really excited about it, and didn't mind taking the risk. The fact that he was the best player in the world at the time, and DP said to me, "Go and get to know him." He didn't say go and tell him how to use analysis. He said go and get to know him. Which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and that comes from the coach, and it also comes with the funding as well, doesn't it? To be able to have him there for that
help,
week not playing is huge.
I mean, how the lottery funding. Well, I mean, the lottery funding created this opportunity. If we go back to when that kicked in, or in *98, which is when you were coming out of the juniors, weren't you? No, did you come out of the juniors?
Yeah.
And even the junior program had fantastic funding, because of the lottery program, and they had full-time coaches in junior, like 2 or 3 full-time coaches.
Yeah.
Full-time S&C, full-time physio, part-time analyst. There was a 0.5 allocated to junior, which is incredible. But the fruition that it had, the fact that we then dominated the sport through the noughties and the start of the tens, really was on the back of that investment.
Quick pause here, because I want to share something important. Every squash player knows the feeling. You're training hard, maybe you've nailed a shot in solo, but then under pressure, in a match, it all falls apart.
You keep asking yourself, what should I really be working on? That's exactly why Laura and I created our online coaching community. Instead of giving you a random set of drills, we've built frameworks that show you how to put the pieces together, so your training time actually translates into match day confidence.
You'll also enjoy live monthly group coaching calls, where you can interact directly with us and get answers tailored to your game.
If you want to stop guessing and start improving with structure, email me at ahad@arperformance.com. I'll personally walk you through whether this community is the right fit for you. All right, let's get back to it. Yeah, when you think about, I'm thinking about, I still actually want to come back for a second to that wearable question, because I think we forgot to get back to that wearable piece. But, given the fact that there's all this funding for that person at home who's listening to us right now, what can they do? Obviously, given the advent of technology, not having a ton of funding potentially for the amateur player who's looking to improve, what would you recommend, Stafford, to that person to try to incorporate some metrics into their game and development?
Yeah, great. And I mean, part of my boring rhetoric, which I've been saying all my life, and people are sick of hearing it, is that you can spend a lot of money badly as well. So yeah, we had good funding, but it was spent well. Because there was a vision, and because there was strong leadership from DP and the coaches at the time. So just having money doesn't mean that you're going to get better. Right. It has to be invested well. So going back to your question around analysis, I mean, these days it's all there, isn't it? It's literally all there. That would have taken us about 3 carry-ons to take to Egypt back in the day. It's 3 VHS players, 2 cameras, and now it's there. So my first thing would be to any player out there: have you actually watched yourself play? Just a basic look at your own swing, your own movement patterns. Pick someone that's your that's your favorite player, look at their movement patterns, look at their swing, and then look at yours. And that then creates a pathway, doesn't it? That creates a kind of needs analysis. This is where I want to be. This is where I am. What's the pathway for me to get there? So just a simple look at your own technique, and then you can use. I haven't got it here. You can just use pen and paper. And as Laura was saying earlier, Robbo does it. You said someone else was doing it, Laura, as well. Just jotting
Jimbo.
down.
James,
Yeah, just jotting down simple. Just draw a picture of the court, and when you're working with the player, or get your mate to do it. So right, I'm playing a match. Can you put an X where I hit an error, and can you put a circle where I hit a winner? And you'll get a simple scattergraph of performances that, you know what, bloody hell, look at all those bloody errors in the backhand corner. What am I doing wrong in the backhand corner there? Right, now let's film you hitting the backhand from the backhand corner. What's going on? Why are all those errors there? And it's going to be something to do with the movement. It's going to be something to do with the swing. It's going to be something to do with the technique.
Yeah.
So simple notational analysis, pen and paper, which is how we started the first Commonwealth Games in 2002, Manchester.
Yeah.
Cameras weren't allowed into the hall during the finals, so I had to go back to a piece of paper and a pen, and we did hand notation. So the fact that some of the equipment can be expensive, that actually doesn't exist anymore, because everyone's got one of these, which is an utter pain in the neck. But anyway, everyone's got a phone. The quality of the video footage is incredible on a phone these days. Absolutely brilliant. And then you do your hand notation stuff on the piece of paper. And then if you do want to get into more complex stuff, do you know what? There's free software everywhere now. If you jumped on the internet and asked for free performance analysis software, there's tens of options that back in the day would cost thousands, and now it's free.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, Laura, that's more incentive for me now as I keep wanting to get better to start recording myself more often. And actually, even now with the phones, there are all these, quarter speed, 1/8 speed, so you can really dive in. 4K, 1/8 speed, you can see every little nook and cranny of the technique.
You can get up to like 150 frames a second.
Yeah.
Just on the phone, which back in the day, that would have been a £50,000 system.
Wow.
Now it's a £200 iPhone. So there's no kind of excuses. It sounds a bit harsh, but the capability and technology is there to use. And to your point there, you were saying about you're going to use it. Why not keep a kind of diary? Capture yourself every week of your certain shots, or maybe just a bit of footage from a match each week, and then you can see how you're actually improving.
Yes.
Which is good, because that will show that the work that you put in is actually making a difference. And seeing yourself improve is also probably the best motivator you can have.
Yeah. I've got a question on the back of that, because I'm sat here thinking, I'm almost feeling like I could jump back on court myself. I'm like, you've got
me and you, come on, let's go.
Let's do it. You're like, you've got such a lot to think about as a squash player. Obviously, you've got your diet, you've got your training, you've got your technique, your analysis, your match practice thoughts, your off-court training. There's so much to think about, recovery. And sometimes it can almost feel like there's too much. But so the players that I work with, the ones that are living and breathing what they do, are the ones that are generally the best, the ones that are, flitting around, not working on the right things, whatever that might be, not having the attention. And I know that's probably the story of sport generally. But in your experience, let's go like as an average across all sports, would you say that there is a correlation between ranking of player and how, what's the word, kind of like how, likely they are to try and assimilate the stuff that you're giving?
Good question.
You're just as an average across all sports, so you don't have to get too personal.
Yeah, I mean,
you can pick on Laura if you want, Stafford.
I mean, obviously, I'm slightly biased, and I'm going to say yes, aren't I? Because that's kind of what I'm selling. But there's always an outlier as well. You look at
of course.
You look at some of the squash players that we were with. Some of them weren't interested, but still become the best players in the world, which is absolutely great. And I think as scientists, we should bloody respect that. And a lot of scientists these days don't actually respect that, and they don't get that. But I think I think they should. But to answer your question in one sentence, in this day and age, athletes that are the best in the world generally take on board science, for want of a better word. Obviously, there's still coaching. Obviously, there's still strong opinions that are very important. But science these days, to be at the top of your game,
Yeah.
is kind of integral to most successful athletes, isn't it?
I mean, I think like the example of Sabalenka springs to mind. I've heard loads about her, you know, serve biomechanics, like working with analysis and, you know, a biomechanic, you know, someone who is able to look at it and go, someone from the outside was going, she's just buckling under pressure. And the guy, I believe it was a guy that she worked with, basically like said it's nothing to do with the pressure. Yes, your swing is breaking down under pressure, of course, but there's a flaw in your technique that's making that happen.
Yeah.
And now look at her. From there, she'd never won a slam, and it's like slight tweaks. But yeah, I was just really interested because I know it is always annoying that there is that outlier, but I just wondered if there was stories of kind of lower ranked people, players in any sports where the ones that just don't kind of embrace that science side, whether it be you, whether it be sports nutrition, psychology, all those little things, the ones that really make big moves up the rankings are the ones that maybe generally kind of just really embrace a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, the word natural talent gets chucked around a lot, doesn't it? Oh, that person's got natural talent. Yeah, that natural talent's going to take you so far these days. I don't think in sport you're going to get to the very, 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 very best by just whatever natural talent is.
Yeah.
You know, that's got to be supplemented by
Yeah.
professional behaviours, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching the tennis last night, and Sinner and Alcaraz, and the way they both warmed up very, very differently, which I thought was bloody fascinating. But I bet you there's some serious biomechanical analysis gone into play beforehand. You know, and there's been a lot of sports science gone into Sinner beforehand. And before a match, he actually prefers to be relaxed and kick a football around the gym. You know, and that's where the personality differences take place.
Yeah.
But I bet you he's gone through a lot of proper scientific approach.
And Stafford, I think that sometimes there's a trend with folks where some data or some information will come out and then people kind of dive into it wholeheartedly, which is great. But sometimes there's not a one size fits all, to your point. So when we get information on biomechanics and things like that, do you feel like everyone's limb length and ratios and different things like that? I just want people to maybe hear from you that if they see something coming out saying that you should hit the ball this way or you should do this way, it isn't always the case, at least in my opinion, that you have to follow this exact prescription of biomechanical analysis. Because if you're, you know, I always tell people, I remember when I was a teenager, I had a fracture in my wrist, and now my wrist doesn't really bend much more than this. So if I'm talking about cocking my wrist, I can really only cock my wrist so far, and it's uncomfortable for me at a certain point. So my natural wrist position is far more relaxed than, say, like a classic position here, which might biomechanically, someone might tell me is, hey, your wrist is not in the correct position. What's your take on, you know, each person's unique limb lengths and their own movement patterns and so on? Is there a particular gold standard, or is there almost like a box or an area within which we want to try to get ourselves to?
Interesting, great question. I mean, three things jump to mind there. One is if we look at the world champions, and let's stick in squash. If we look at the female and male world champions over the last 20 years, let's say, not one of them has got the same swing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but what I would say is what they do just before impact and what they do just after impact is probably quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how they actually land at that point will be specific to the individual, and coaches have got certain preferences. You know, Dave Pearson coaches in a certain way, Malcolm Wilstrop was coaching a certain way, etc. But the point pre-impact, impact, and post-impact, that's going to be pretty similar across players. But if you look at a prescribed swing, and if you say the limb length or the body type of the person doesn't actually fit that type of swing, then just look at all the different world champions, and they've all got different swings. You know, there's many ways to skin a cat.
Yes, beautiful.
Which DP will hate, by the way, but I'll phone him and apologise after.
No, it was interesting because when he came on the podcast, he said one of the things I was quite surprised actually that he said was there are many ways to coach. It would be boring if everybody played the same. And
Interesting.
if you are working with a coach and it's working, good for you.
Yeah,
His
yeah,
issue is when people are working with a coach or trying to teach a technique and it's ultimately it's not working. I think that,
yeah,
and that would be the bugbear of any coach, I guess,
of
because
course.
it is all about the great matchups are the ones that are the two contrasts of a Gohar versus a Shabini, because they're
Yeah,
two fundamentally different players, a Farag versus an Asal, like different body type, different, that's fun, isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. So no, he was actually really complimentary about other players, other coaches who were doing really well, which was
That's
great.
good.
You'd expect that as a top coach, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the best coaches in the world learn from each other as well, don't they?
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'm sure you've been around him enough, and as a coach, even now transitioning, the one thing, and Danny has obviously had a huge influence on me. The one thing that probably this ties into analysis as well is the best coaches ask questions.
Yeah,
Even the best of the best of the best, they want to know questions. They want to ask other coaches questions, ask you questions, and go, how can we keep getting better? The ones that go, I know it all. I don't need any help. I don't need. This is how you play, and this is it.
they'll have a shelf
It's a
life.
bit, no, yeah, it's rigid, isn't it?
Yeah, and they'll have a shelf life, and they'll have a width of opportunity. You know,
Wow.
definitely.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating that like you say, Danny, your partner and coach, he comes from a kind of science background, doesn't he? As
Yeah.
you know, and I think you look at a lot of the top coaches in kind of a lot of the sports now, they've got that blend between coaching and science. But
Yeah.
then you look at a lot of the very, very, very top coaches, and they actually rely on the scientists to deliver the science. They're almost the chief executive of the company, and they don't really need to know what's going on. They just need to be told the bottom line. So they put faith in their scientists that they're delivering good science.
Yeah.
Um, so there's different operating models, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I just remember working with a psychologist one time and him coming watching a match of me playing Nicole, and I was like, got a psychology, brain issue. I can't beat her. Then he just helped me beat her. And he watched the match with me and he basically was like, you haven't got a mental problem, you've got a physical problem. Until you get fit enough to beat her, you're gonna struggle. And I'm like, what? You are? Which
Interesting,
is
though, isn't it?
bloody, I mean, you've got to be able to take honesty there, haven't you, as a player? And that's just like, I mean, you must have been in some situations like that where you're like, you haven't got a problem with your swing, or you haven't got a problem with this or
You,
whatever. You've got a
you,
physical problem or a
you just ain't fit
mental
enough.
problem. And
And I mean, back in the day, back then, 20 years ago, you could actually say that. You know,
probably was about 15, 20 years ago.
yeah. Whereas perhaps now you can't say that. You can't say actually you haven't got a psychological issue. You need to run up that hill 20 times and get pretty fit. But you probably can't say that these days, can you?
That's sad though. Can you
I
not?
know, I know, I know. But
Can you not say that to somebody that,
I don't know.
like,
Perhaps you can. I mean, I'm sure you can, but obviously you can't. You going into the realms of difficulty if you start talking about body composition,
yes,
etc.
of course, of course.
So
I
obviously
don't think he was saying I was overweight.
no, I know I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying he's different then. I was just saying he's different then. That's all.
He
Laura,
may
your
have
brain's
been.
going
Maybe
now.
that was his roundabout way. Look at Nicole.
Yeah.
She's like a Duracell bunny. She'll go for days. And look at you. It's not. I don't. Who knows? But
Interesting. Interesting. Was it you, Laura, or was it perhaps it wasn't you, but one of you ladies in the team at the time, and I can't remember who it was. And Sarah Fitzgerald was kind of, I think she packed in a bit and she started playing again,
yeah,
and she started beating everyone. And I remember sat with, I thought it was you, perhaps it was Tanya Bailey maybe, and they were saying, forget the person you're playing, forget the name of the person you're playing, just play against that person as a player. And that took so much pressure off. It
yeah,
took so much anxiety away from the person they're playing. You're not
yeah,
you're not playing against one of the greatest players in the world ever, who's just come out of
yeah.
retirement. You're playing against someone that's not anywhere near as good as you.
Yeah, it
You know,
wasn't me because I would have loved to. I didn't play a competitive match against
oh, didn't
Fitzy,
you?
but we've had her on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she was fascinating. She made the game very simple in her own way, just very simple, like hit the ball, see the ball, don't think about hitting the ball.
Yeah.
and that's and I mean that's a and that was a compliment to Fissy because I think she's wonderful. She's a great person
Yeah,
and one of the best
yeah,
players ever
right,
across
yeah.
across the whole sport. And she's fab. But the fact that people were still scared of the name, even though she wasn't at her peak, that just shows the power that she had in the sport, doesn't it?
Yeah, but she told a brilliant story on the podcast for anyone who's not listened to that one yet, about coming back from a knee injury and drawing Shelley Kitchen in the qualification of a small event, drawing the name out like they used to, Shelley Kitchen to play Fitzy. She went, "Oh, sorry, love." You like that's just who she was, wasn't it? Just super
Brilliant.
confident. And
I
then
love it.
that's how you compound that kind of mental edge over people over years.
Love
And
it.
everyone sat there in that qualification draw pull out was just like, oh
Yeah.
God.
Oh, she is. Excuse my French. Yeah. Yeah. Australian confidence.
Yeah. Well, no, Stafford, this is great, my friend. I appreciate your time. I'm all tapped out of questions. Laura, do you have anything more you want to ask Stafford?
I think I just got one more, probably back to, probably the one thing that I kind of wanted to know. So I'm thinking if I'm finding it interesting, DP mentioned, and something stuck out in my brain of a story, obviously growing up, it must have been Commonwealth Games. I'm thinking, was Melbourne 2006?
Melbourne was
2006? Manchester.
2006. There you go. Photo.
Ah,
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't make that team. I was on the reserve list, unfortunately. But I've heard the stories over the years of the Peter
You're on the Delhi
Nicol.
one, though.
I'm on the Delhi one, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Peter Nicol and David Palmer, that match. I said to DP, there's something in my mind that stands out. So maybe a double-ended question, really, about Stafford playing a major part in that final, and I couldn't quite remember the details. And he said something about a redrop tactic that you'd
Yeah.
plucked out and fed to Peter pre-match against David Palmer for the gold medal match. So I was wondering if you could maybe talk us through that. And then the other one was just maybe your favourite moment across any sport that you've worked in where you've, maybe it might be that one, but provided a piece of information that's been a game changer to someone who, has won a major match or a medal or something that's just made you super proud for being able to give them that information.
Blimey, brilliant, great questions. Yes. So the first one, yeah, it was the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, and Pete was Pete number 1 seed and Palmer? No, I think Palmer was number 1 seed and Pete was number 2 seed. I think.
And obviously home games for him as well.
Home games. Beach got to the semis. I think Nick might have got to the semis as well.
Yeah.
And Pete had quite a tough semi against either Nick or Beach. I can't remember it, but he was a proper ding dong. And then got to the final, and it was a huge, especially then. There must have been honestly 3,000 people there watching, maybe even more, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And there was about 20 English people. So there's basically 5,000 Aussies shouting for Palmer and just after Nichol's blood, And Palmer walked in. And the place is bouncing, the music's blaring, absolutely brilliant, and made the hair in the back of your neck stand up, And then Nicol walked in and he was just spinning the racket on his finger. The coolest I've ever seen it. Obviously beneath the water, he was paddling like hell, but he was so cool. And we'd done a little bit of video analysis, I think in the week before, even the day before, I can't remember off the top of my head, how to try and beat Dave Palmer. Loads of numbers, etc. Blah 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 blah. But it all came down to Palmer struggled with the movement of going back into his front backhand corner. So Pete's forehand front corner. So part of the tactic was every time that Palmer went short into his front backhand, Nicol just plopped in a drop, or if Palmer chucked in a forehand boast, he just put in a nice straight drop. Didn't have to be a nick, didn't have to be a winner, didn't have to be the best drop ever, but just to expose that movement. The first 2 games, it didn't really work because Palmer was strong and he was all over it, But then as he started to get a little bit tired, an hour and 10, an hour and 15, and that counter drop back into the backhand, Palmer's backhand, Pete's forehand just kept on working. And the match, the rally that won the match was exposed by that counter drop, and he actually counter dropped him twice. And me and Pearson were like, hey.
That's so cool.
But it was, but I mean, it's nothing to do with it. It's the fact that Nick was strong as an ox, mentally
Yeah,
incredible. I mean, the way that he dealt with that scenario, 5,000 Aussies veering for his blood, and just 10 of us behind the court banging on the glass.
yeah,
I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, it helped, no doubt, but it didn't get the win, but it was very nice. It was an incredible thing to be part of.
yeah.
Incredible thing to be part of. Um,
Yeah, but it just goes to show as well, doesn't it, that, sometimes you come up with this tactic, and this has been the case even in my own matches, it doesn't kind of come to fruition
yeah,
until a little bit later on in the match, or,
yeah, that's right.
you've got to get your opponent to a certain physical or mental state before it really starts to kind of almost show up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Pete used to, interestingly, we were talking about creating pressure earlier. What Pete used to do, and I'm sure the players do it now, and Pete used to do it a lot as well. Is that he would sacrifice the accuracy of a volley to get a volley in, because that decreases the time available for your opponent. Therefore, it increases the pressure, and that build up of pressure across a rally. Obviously, I'm teaching my crannies to suck eggs here, but but just from a kind of, that's where, if you looked at it from a pure analytical point of view, if you just looked at the tightness of their volleys, it might not be very tight.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're taking the time away from their opponent. That's where numbers in isolation without context can be quite dangerous. You know.
Interesting.
But to answer your question about the most important, or the proudest moment, do you know, probably, don't know, Laura. That's a tough thing. Squash wise, to be honest, probably going to Delhi.
Yeah.
And you were there, and it was tough. When it was a tough environment. You
Yeah.
know, there was a lot of food poisoning. There was a lot of illness in the village. The places that we stay in were not the best.
They weren't
And
even ready, and I remember
no,
you flying out a week early to make sure
yeah.
that we had accommodation that was just not half built.
Well, me, Camps, and Will Forbes, who was the other analyst at the time, I was the manager there. When we spent 3 days with marigolds on, literally cleaning the bedrooms, trying to get them ready for when you, and then when you arrive, it's all fine, it's perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
But the way that we came through that, and we all dug in, and we became and that was the first time we ever topped the squash medals in the Commonwealth Games. That's probably the proudest moment. And I remember he was playing the last match doubles. Did you play with Granty?
No, me and Jenny lost. We got silver to the Kiwi player, so it would have been probably Nick and
Nick
Granty.
and Granty.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember
got gold.
being so nervous. I couldn't watch the last game. I went to the badminton hall next door and lay on the floor and phoned my wife and said, I
Well,
can't.
we had a it was a struggle of a week, because remember Alison tweaked her Achilles, didn't she, in
That's
the
right.
individual,
Yeah,
and had to pull
that's
out
right.
the bronze medal match, and it was quite
That's right.
stressful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so considering we threw a bronze medal, well, not threw away, no guarantees, but we threw a
Yeah.
bronze medal away with Alison losing that. So yeah, great.
No,
That's brilliant.
so
Well, what?
that's the most proud squash moment. But my takeaway is just working with you guys, working that period of time, DP, Carts, yourself, that gang
Yeah.
is just it's just incredible period of time, really.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that sticks out, just to kind of wrap up from me, was when I asked you originally to come on this podcast, and you sent me a voice note or a voicemail or something, and I said to Danny, Stafford's left me this voicemail, and his voice and all these memories came flooding back. I think I told you when I messaged you back.
Yeah.
And Danny just went, well, it's always about you remember people for how they make you feel, and not how, what they do necessarily, which obviously is a bit of a disservice to what you actually do. But I think with you, that and the humanizing effect that you've talked about, Peter Knuckle, I think that was a really big thing with the way that you handled everything back in there. And it's still a testament to kind of the feelings that came back to me when I heard your voice. How many years later? When was the last time I saw you? Probably
12, 15 years. Yeah, 12 years ago, maybe.
yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Laura. That's very
I
kind.
would like to kind of just say thank you for that, because it's brilliant. And I think it's a fair thing to say to anybody who's listening to this, who's a coach or in part of sport, anywhere or anytime. It really is ultimately about how you make people feel, and not always about what you're giving over. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's very nice words. And without blowing smoke up his trousers, DP told me that it's about people. It's got to be in it.
Yeah.
And do you know what? We've got to enjoy the journey as well. Winning is very important, of course it is, but you've got to enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. Any final words I had?
No, I just want to thank you, Stafford. You've
Pleasure. Absolute
I
pleasure.
actually your personality. This is the first time we've met, obviously, but I've really enjoyed your personality, your humor, the way you've articulated things, the way you've simplified things. Yeah, this is standout. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure. Great to meet you, and thanks for having my first squash racket behind you on the
Yeah,
wall.
much appreciated. I still play with it from time to time, by the way. So,
Can you imagine trying to play with them now? You
oh,
can barely get the ball.
it's hard. It's very difficult.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you, Stafford. Have a good one, and we'll chat soon.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you. And thanks, Laura. Bloody great to see you again. And congratulations on all your achievements in squash, but now achievements as a mom.
Thank you.
Have you ever felt stuck in your squash? Are you training hard, but you're not sure if you're working on the right things to actually get better under pressure?
That's exactly why I created a new online coaching community. Unlike other programs that give you just drills, we give you a framework so you know exactly what to work on, why it matters, and how to hold up in real matches.
Whether it's finally breaking through a plateau, structuring your solo practice, or joining us live each month for group coaching, this community is designed to take the guesswork out of improvement. If this resonates with you, please send me an email at ahad@arperformance.com. I will personally help you see if it's the right fit. Thanks for listening to Between the Lines, where world-class insight fuels the squash journey that never ends. If today's episode helped you grow, please share it with someone in your squash circle and join our community online. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and stay in the rally.